What's going on with the economy affects us all. From how much it costs to take out a loan, to how much you drop on your weekly grocery bill, it's worth paying attention to what's happening in the magical world of money. Only, economics can be a little confusing. And if you've ever tried jumping feet first into an article in the New York Times business section, you know it can use a lot of jargon. I mean, it's called the dismal science for a reason, you know? So whether you're enrolling in your first econ course or trying to make it through a Paul Krugman article or just trying to understand that Karl Marx meme, we're here to supply all that knowledge economics demands. Hi, I'm Erica Brzozowski, and here's all the essential vocab you should know about economics. First, what even is economics? Well, economics itself is a kind of social science that studies the production and consumption of stuff, known as goods and services in econ speak, as well as how people, businesses, and even whole countries make decisions about how to address their unlimited wants with limited resources. And when you hear about the economy, you're really hearing about the system that produces and allocates those resources. In our economy today, we trade goods and services for money, which is just any medium of exchange that everyone kind of agrees has value. Like that $10 bill burning a hole in your wallet. It's really only worth something because we, as a society, have decided it is. People who study the economy are called economists, and they've been around for a long time. People were thinking about economics as far back as 1750 BCE, where the Code of Hammurabi included provisions on economics. Ancient Greek and medieval Islamic philosophers like Plato and Ibn Khaldun also wrote extensively on economics. There are a couple kinds of economics like microeconomics, which studies the economic decisions of individual people or businesses. Meanwhile, macroeconomics is the study of any large-scale economic system, like a country or even the whole world. And there are a couple kinds of economies too, like the free market system, popularized by 18th century Scottish philosopher Adam Smith, where businesses are privately owned and unregulated. You've probably also heard the system called capitalism, because the people who have the most power in the system are the Jeff Bezoses, Elon Musks, Mark Zuckerbergs, Warren Buffetts, and other aspiring supervillains of the world, who control the means of supply and hold the most capital, or wealth. There are also kinds of economies where the government and its people are in charge of business, no trust fund required. This is known as socialism, which includes communism, and was popularized by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the 19th century. While many people think of the United States as being a capitalist country, the US is actually technically what's called a mixed economy, because residents do benefit from lots of kinds of socialist-style government intervention, like public schools and libraries, government-funded infrastructure projects like roads, and Social Security. Don't worry if that all sounds overwhelming though. No matter the economic system, at its heart, the dismal science is about two things pretty familiar to all of us: supply and demand. Supply is just how much of something is available, like Taylor Swift tickets, garden gnomes, or NYC apartments with in-unit laundry. And demand is how many people want those Taylor Swift tickets, garden gnomes, apartments, or anything else at a given price point. It's why instead of singing your heart out at the Eras Tour, you sat at home, sadly listening to Blank Space on repeat with a pile of dirty laundry you don't have the quarters to wash. Generally, the less supply is available, the more money suppliers will charge. And generally, the more money suppliers charge, the less demand there is for their supply. Meanwhile, if demand for a certain good, say floor seats for T Swift, is higher, suppliers like Ticketmaster can charge more money. According to many economists, this push-pull of supply and demand helps the two settle at a price point where there are the exact same levels of supply and demand, known as equilibrium. Now, whether you're diving into an economic article or an intro course, another really important term you're bound to run into, like Wile E. Coyote into a giant rock, is gross domestic product, or GDP. This just means the total value of all the stuff a country makes in a given period of time, usually a year. And it's important because lots of economists, politicians, and briefcase-toting business folk use it to measure economic health. Generally, the more stuff a country is supplying, the higher the GDP, and the better the economy is working, assuming your definition of working is making that bank. Of course, like with everything in econ, there are all sorts of fun caveats to GDP as a true measure of economic health. So economists have introduced special GDP flavors to try to make it more accurate. For example, Real GDP takes into account changes in how much value a dollar actually has, and real GDP per capita looks at GDP in relation to a country's population. You also might have heard the term potential real GDP, which refers not to an actual amount a country is producing, but how much it could potentially produce if absolutely everything in an economy was working at its best. Economists also have all sorts of special words to describe the economy as GDP increases and decreases. Like periods of rising GDP are called expansions, because the implication is that the economy is growing or expanding. But look out, too much economic expansion can lead to inflation, which is when prices begin to rise and money begins to lose its power. When your favorite matcha latte, no milk preference, is suddenly $8 instead of its usual $5, inflation could be to blame. Meanwhile, periods when GDP dips are called contractions because the economy is getting smaller. If a contraction is severe enough or lasts longer than 6 months, it's referred to as a recession. Recessions are associated with higher unemployment and lower demand, and they're just a general all-around bummer. Ask any millennial you know. One way the government can help the economy out of a recession or tamp down inflation is through something called monetary policy. Monetary policy is a collection of actions by a country's central bank that can influence demand in an economy. This happens through changing interest rates, or how much money you have to pay when you take out a loan for something like a new car, a house, college tuition, or construction on an adult-sized ball pit. When a central bank lowers interest rates, it makes it cheaper to borrow money, which makes people more likely to spend big, which in turn helps bump up the GDP. While if it's more expensive to borrow, spending will decrease, inflation will slow, and hopefully the price tag on your favorite caffeinated beverage will go back to normal. In the US, the central bank is known as the Federal Reserve, or the Fed for short. So when you hear the Fed lowered interest rates, you can know that what's really happening is the central bank is making it cheaper and easier to borrow money. And all other things being equal, it's a great time to break ground on that adult-sized ball pit. Fiscal policy is another way ye olde government can help out an economy in its time of need. Rather than a country's central bank, this stuff comes straight from the executive and legislative branches, or the president and Congress in the US. Fiscal policy includes stuff like stimulus checks or tax credits to get people spending and that demand back up. Economists sometimes disagree about just how much monetary and fiscal policy should go down, and those different perspectives have their own jargon too. Like you might hear someone refer to themselves as a neoclassicist. These are folks who lean more on unregulated supply and demand to balance out the economy, believing these market forces are more than enough to pull the economy out of a recession or to regulate inflation. Keynesians, meanwhile, are economists who put more stock in that government intervention in monetary and fiscal policy to help sort out economic woes. And when it comes to economics, like many social sciences, perspective matters. So knowing just what your professor means when they say they're taking a Keynesian approach is key. But you might also hear about Marxism or laissez-faire economics or neoliberalism. Everyone has an opinion about how our economy works. Our producer Caroline thinks we should all just share and get along, but that's just her. Honestly, it sounds pretty nice. A basic understanding of these terms is the first step to forming your own economic perspective, but also to understanding the world as a whole. Like it or not, modern society is ruled by economics, your own life included. So although we might be a couple $1 billion of capital away from being the real economic powerhouses, understanding what's up with the economy is crucial to taking up your own economic power. If you're interested in taking an online macroeconomics course for just $25 and unlocking the chance to earn college credit from ASU, check out our GoStudyHall.com or click on the button to learn more. And if you want to help us out, give this video a like, tell us about something you're saving for in the comments, and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you next time.